Ok, es tiempo de empezar. Estamos muy agradecidos por su tiempo para juntarse en este webinar el día de hoy. Por favor, aquellos que hablan español y requieren traducción del inglés al español, pueden dirigirse a la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom. Allí encontrarán un botón que tiene la forma de un globo terrestre. Si dan clic a ese botón, encontrarán dos canales, inglés o español. Por favor, seleccione español si usted quiere escuchar el webinar en español. Por favor, seleccione inglés si usted quiere escuchar el webinar en inglés. Muchas gracias a todos por su tiempo y esperamos que el webinar sea de mucha ayuda para todos.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Jordan Rutter, Director of Communications at American Bird Conservancy. I'm excited to share that we have a live interpreter on the panel today for English and Spanish translation, since we'll be speaking in both languages. If you would like to use these services, it will require a bit of setup on your part. So at the bottom of your screen, there should be a globe icon. And if you do not see that globe, it may be due to your screen size, but don't worry. Please click on the More button. Look for the 3 dots at the bottom for additional options, and interpretation should be listed there. From here, you can choose which language you want to listen to the presentations in. You only need to click on this when you want a translation from the language being used by the panelists. So for instance, I'm currently speaking in English, and if that works for you, then feel free to not even touch the buttons. You do not need to click on English currently if that's the language that works for you. However, if you'd like for what I'm saying to be translated into Spanish, then please click on the Spanish option. If I could go to the next slide, we'll show you these buttons. So the button that has the globe icon is currently showing on the screen, and that's the one that you want to click on if you need a different language than what we're speaking in. If you don't see the globe icon, next slide, please. It may be in that More option. So again, look for the 3 dots if you don't see the globe, and then click on Interpretation. Again, if the language I'm speaking in right now works for you, don't even worry about touching your screen. And we'll make sure to keep talking about this in the chat as well as throughout the presentations. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterward. We'll be putting the links referenced in the chat in that follow-up email, but in case you can't copy them down fast enough, just know we'll make sure you get them. Please submit any questions you have during the presentation using the Q&A box, which is also at the bottom of your screen. And we'll try to answer as many of those as we can during the Q&A portion at the end of the presentations. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I want to share some background about American Bird Conservancy, shortened to ABC, that was founded in 1994 with the mission of protecting wild birds and their habitats across the Americas. We continue that work today following a conservation strategy outlined by the pyramid featured on the current slide. Our work strives to help keep common birds common and prevent the rare species from going extinct. Bird conservation works. Species and groups of birds have rebounded in the past decades, but it doesn't happen without people like you who care about birds. So thank you again for joining our webinar today. As I just mentioned, you and other folks are helping birds every day all around the world. Today, we'll be discussing the recently launched Bird City Network. The network unites and connects independent Bird City programs throughout the Western Hemisphere that work directly with local communities to envision and complete bird-friendly actions. In the presentations given today, we'll learn more about how this idea came to be, what an individual Bird City designation requires, and more about the plans of the network to help birds and people on an international scale. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers. Next slide, please. Bryan Lenz is ABC's Bird City Network Director. He completed his undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin, a master's in primate conservation from Oxford Brookes University, and was awarded a master's and PhD in biological anthropology from Tulane University, where he studied the impacts of cattle ranching on primates in the Amazon. Bryan joined ABC after being the director of Bird City, Wisconsin, and chief scientist at Lake Michigan Bird Observatory. Joanna Eckles is ABC's Bird City Network coordinator. Her entire career has been bird focused, originally starting with field research, then positions at the Minnesota Zoo, World Parrot Trust, Audubon, and the Raptor Center before coming to ABC to help create the Bird City Network. Susan Bonfield is the founder and executive director of Environment for the Americas, a 501c3 organization that works to protect migratory birds and their habitats by nurturing partnerships between communities throughout the Western Hemisphere, inspiring respect and affinity for nature, and preparing the next generation of conservation leaders. Susan has over 30 years of experience managing research and educational collaborations across the Western Hemisphere and in Europe, leading multi-organizational research projects and mentoring youth. Susan holds a master's degree in natural resources from the University of Michigan and a PhD in human dimensions of natural resources from Colorado State University. We also have Miguel Matta, who is the Latin American coordinator for Environment for the Americas, where he has worked since 2018 coordinating World Migratory Bird Day in the region. Miguel also works together with the Venezuelan Ornithologists Union to keep the community united and updated, participate in tracking projects using MODIS, offer training workshops for bird banders, and participate in academic exchanges. Miguel holds a degree in biology from the Central University of Venezuela, where he is now a member of the Laboratory of Biology and Conservation of Birds of the Faculty of Sciences as a visiting researcher. Bryan is going to start the presentations off now, and he'll be speaking in English. So only click on that interpretation bottom, that globe icon at the bottom, if you want to have the presentation translated to Spanish. So Bryan, if you want to get all set up.
I am unable to start my video. It says the host has stopped it.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Let me get my slideshow going here. All right, so thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us today. My name is Bryan Lenz. I figure a good place to start our conversation today is by telling you what a bird city is. Bird cities are communities that work together to help birds. Makes sense. That's not a misnomer. Those communities take actions in 4 different categories. You work on improving bird habitat, reducing threats to birds, engaging and educating people, and promoting sustainability. If you take enough actions in those categories, you can become recognized as a bird city community. We have organized those actual actions into the 4 categories, but underneath the categories into a set of best practices. So you could think about working on window collisions or promoting native plants. We'll go more into these when Joanna follows me in a minute, but this is just so you can kind of start to see the framework of what communities are being asked to do through Bird City. The Bird City program exists to empower people to make changes in their communities. There are a lot of people who don't like what they see happening in the natural world around them. The news can be hard to read. They also want to do things to improve their communities in dimensions other than the natural world. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but there aren't very many people who have training or expertise in these areas or for whom it's their job. And that fact is a big barrier to people actually getting started and taking action. So Bird City is a guide. It's basically a set of tools that is written for anybody to be able to go and do wherever you live. So you can go and live in the type of community that you want to. The Bird City idea started in Wisconsin. The first program was created in 2009. It was inspired by the Tree City model, Tree City USA, which is the Arbor Day Foundation. It involves official community buy-in. So if you're a motivated individual and you want to do something only on your property, that's not sufficient for Bird City status. It can be part of it, but you need the community itself, whether it's a mayor, a city council, a town board, a tribal council, whatever the body or person is who kind of is in charge of your community has to be bought in. How much work they actually do beyond that varies from place to place, but you need them on board. It's also worth mentioning what we mean when we say community. Across the current Bird City Network programs, the types of communities that can be recognized are a city, a village, a town, a county, a campus, and a tribal or a sovereign nation. This may grow a little bit as the program continues to grow, but we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, as long as you have that ability to have official community buy-in. There are also no size requirements. Going to Wisconsin as an example, the smallest community is Ferryville on the Mississippi River, which has 177 people, and the largest is the city of Milwaukee with over 500,000. So this really is designed for everyone. Since the launch of the Wisconsin program, we have seen a lot of organic growth happen. These programs have all come online with varying degrees of assistance from the original Wisconsin program, but they've all been connected to Wisconsin in one way or another. So far, we've got hundreds of communities taking thousands of actions annually for birds. And that culminates where we are today in 2023, launching the Bird City Network, which is something we've been working on for several years now. This is that same group of programs that have joined the Bird City Network, just so you can see their distribution. Our goal is to have this map be colored in completely. So hopefully that's where we are heading. The network is being run by American Bird Conservancy and Environment for the Americas, but we've gotten major support from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, both the Urban Bird Treaty Program and the Midwest region. So we would like to just say a big public thank you for the support, the guidance, the advice, the partnership that has gotten us this far, and that we look forward to continuing into the future, hopefully for a very long time. When thinking about the structure of the Bird City Network, you can think of it at 3 levels. Kind of over the top is the Bird City Network, which is, again, ABC and EFTA. ABC has been in charge of kind of creating and coordinating the network itself. So building the website, getting the guidance put together, figuring out how to reach out to all of the existing programs, and more or less putting it together how we got to here today. Then ABC is in charge of doing recruiting and building new programs in North America. And so we're going out and looking for partners. Environment for the Americas is doing that recruiting in Latin America and the Caribbean, and has also been engaged really closely with us as we do the network work overall. Then if you move down one level, this is where things really start to happen. And that's the program level. And each of the programs listed here is run by regional partners. They're independent organizations, and they own, staff, fund, make all the decisions for their programs. So we are very appreciative for all that they're doing for birds, and that they're continuing to do, and that they're here with us today, and have joined and bought into the vision we've got for how this could work. Those individual programs are the people that work with the communities. So the people at the network level are not interfacing directly with the communities. The local spirit, the local guidance, the local advice of this makes it vital that the communities work more regionally and in a more focused way, which is why it's set up this way. There are a number of reasons why we have decided to build the network. I mean, you could be sitting here watching this and thinking, well, man, there's already 11. Why do they need a network if the organic spread has gotten them this far? One thing we've seen as each new program comes online is that they have the same conversations. They reach some of the same sticking points, and they need the same kind of assistance. And so it's a lot of reinventing the wheel that we think we can alleviate for people by kind of having someone who is here serving that role of providing guidance and help. We also want to build an international community. At the moment, the communities that are in the network kind of live within each of their programs, and we're looking to do everything we can to really make this a visible community of people who are all pushing in the same direction to improve their communities for both birds and people. We can also provide a lot of guidance, both from the network level and in connecting these programs. If you're a new program and you run into a problem, there's probably a bunch of other programs that have run into that same problem and can help you out. And now we've got, a way for those folks to interface. We've built a very, very big, fancy website that's going to do a lot of stuff and fundamentally change how these programs can work. You'll hear more about that in a minute. There's a lot of room for funding and partnership opportunities that the network can look for very large funding opportunities and look to get it on the ground through Bird City programs and communities that likely wouldn't be able to access those funds by themselves. We've built a tourism platform, which is going to be great. Birders travel, and so we can get them traveling to the Bird City communities. There's also a possibility for Bird City people to directly connect. If you're traveling and going to another place, you can go meet the Bird City team that's there and build a personal connection with them and a relationship. And then there's also a lot of sharing that can be done that gets back to that efficiency, sharing of resources, ideas, experiences. There's just a lot of ways that we can all help each other through the network.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bryan. We're now going to have Joanna share about the network itself, and she will also be presenting in English. So again, if you would like the translation aspect, just click on the globe and then hit Spanish. If you are okay with English, don't worry about clicking anything.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Bryan. Teed me up nicely. I am going to start with practical matters. I am going to talk about how does it work. I'll talk about what it takes to be a Bird City and what we have built to help programs and communities do this work. Starting off with the requirements and kind of the action list, like the actual application. So we showed this sort of overall action framework earlier, and I'll get to it. And in general, to be designated as a Bird City, communities first kind of create a local team to bring people together. They get some kind of official buy-in, as Bryan explained, from leadership. Typically that's municipal, but it does depend on the community. They hold a bird celebration, and then they fulfill a number of actions across these different categories. That number varies between programs, but it usually is between, say, 10 and 20 actions. Some programs have an advanced level that you can apply for, which requires typically more or harder actions. So let's talk about the actions and give you a few examples. Creating and protecting habitat is obviously very critical. It's something Bird City programs and communities spend a lot of time on. It can be accomplished at a lot of different scales. We need all the scales, large and small, and it's especially important to be thinking big. So Bird City is really about creating long-term systemic change, influencing the way things are done, especially on kind of that municipal community scale now, but also into the future. And that might mean a community adopting a tree policy, for example, that increases the diversity of native climate resilient species. Those species benefit birds and other wildlife, but also people. There's a really urgent need in many areas to increase urban tree canopy for wildlife, but also critically for human health. So these things go hand in hand. It could also mean creating habitat corridors along city right-of-way areas. This is an example where a boulevard that is typically typically grass can be used to actually make habitat connections. You might also do that where there's power lines or on a roadside in these common areas, and communities, municipalities have control over that. There's a need to revamp policies to allow and support and encourage residents to do less mowing and plant more native plants. In many places, policies are really outdated and they can make these critical actions really difficult for people. If we think about threats, municipalities have a lot of opportunity to create policies, for example, to reduce the number of free roaming cats, which cause a lot of problems for birds and other animals. They can reduce their chemical use in all of their many operations. Also reducing and eliminating glass collisions through their actions and their policies. Example of that, a municipality might take inventory of all of their buildings, look for glass problems, and then systematically treat those problems. This is an example of a skyway in St. Paul that has been treated to reduce bird collisions. And so fixing these existing problems in our communities is really important. There's a lot of existing problem areas, but also municipalities can stop or reduce the construction of new dangerous places by passing ordinances that require new construction to use more bird-friendly strategies. And this approach is really gaining traction, and there's great resources available from all of the work that's been done. Businesses within a community can take part too. This is a museum in Wisconsin that treated their very large windows for bird safety. Not only to protect the birds, but they also serve as a demonstration project. So people visiting can see one way that they could do that very same thing at their home. So as with habitat, it takes all scales, the bigger the better, but all of our actions matter. Okay, and one example from the engagement category, we mentioned a bird celebration. So one thing we encourage all Bird City communities to do is to celebrate World Migratory Bird Day. And both Sue and Miguel are going to talk more about that. But Environment for the Americas selects a theme to focus on every year. This year it's water, and they produce a variety of great resources to help people learn and take action locally on that. So Bird City is about action. It's about conservation action at this local scale. And those are just a few of hundreds of examples of action that can be taken. These things are happening and they're possible for your community too. And so for us to help these programs and communities do this work and share their accomplishments and manage all the details, we have built the website. So I'm going to show you that next, quick walkthrough of how that works. So the site helps programs to operate more efficiently. It allows us all to work together more easily because we're working on the same platform. And it also allows us to show our collective impact. So at a glance, we can see all the existing programs. We can see all their communities. We can see that birding tourism opportunities, and this is going to grow as communities add places to bird, places to eat, and places to stay. And within the network site, each program has a full website that they can customize as they wish. It shows things from their perspective and their individual programs. Each of these that you're seeing come up here are the existing inaugural programs that came on board to join this collaboration. And each of them operates independently, but we all use the same platform. This was Bird City, Wisconsin. Bryan mentioned they started it all in in 2009. And really what's come of that is this whole network coming together. And now just in the past 2 years, we've been able to, using these tools and this model, launch the first 2 international programs using the same framework and figuring out the differences and similarities there. So that's very exciting news. And then quickly, just to look at one individual program, I'll pick Iowa because they've done a lot of great work on their site. Key aspect is that each program creates and manages their content. They can add information about them. They can put resources up that'll be helpful to their communities. They can put up their specific instructions for applying and renewing. And they also have a place where all their communities show up really clearly so you can go and see more. And when you choose a community anywhere throughout the site, you can see more about what they're doing, and they are able to create this content too. They also benefit from a really important tool, and that is by logging into the website, they have the ability to apply and renew. And so that's really extremely important. Once they do that, they apply and their program approves their action. So show up here so that other communities can learn from the actions they've taken in the different categories. Communities also have the ability to put up events that are happening there and this critical tourism piece that everybody wanted, and we're really excited about this. Birding is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and this gives communities a chance to perhaps draw some of that attention and build support for the work that they're doing to protect birds in their community. So that quickly is the website. And I will actually close with a thank you again to these inaugural programs. They really showed up for the conversations. They helped each other. They helped us. And then they worked really hard to get their information into the website. Many of them are on the call today, and thank you very much. We appreciate working with you and are excited for what's ahead. And I'll pass it to Sue.
Thanks so much, Joanna. So yeah, as Sue gets set up, she will be presenting in English. So if you need any translation services, remember to click the bottom globe icon on your screen and select Spanish.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Joanna and Bryan. It's a real pleasure to be here today with our partners at American Bird Conservancy. Environment for the Americas is based in Colorado, but we're a multinational organization with staff located across the Americas. Our mission is to extend far beyond borders and cultures and languages, and we are dedicated to building communities that foster partnerships to protect our beautiful earth, with a special focus on the remarkable birds that unite us through their migrations. And I just want to introduce you to a few of our staff, just because they make all of these programs happen. And again, they are located across the Americas. We have staff in Oregon, Colorado, Central and South America, Mexico, and the Caribbean. And they're a critical part of all of our programs, as well as for Bird City program. We're part of the Bird City network, partly because of our strong interest also in community building for bird conservation, and also because we can provide a critical component to your Bird City program, which is World Migratory Bird Day. And World Migratory Bird Day is a global event. It focuses on bird migrations and how people can take action for migratory bird conservation. World Migratory Bird Day is a platform that you can easily use and integrate into your Bird City program, and it serves as a bridge to your community to help explain your Bird City program in this case. So we have almost 700 World Migratory Bird Day events across the Americas, and then more globally. What makes a World Migratory Bird Day event? What we encourage in any World Migratory Bird Day event is first that you incorporate messages about conservation. So these programs should focus on bird conservation, using education to reach communities and diverse audiences, providing ways that people can get involved in helping to protect birds in their habitats, and being sure to improve and increase inclusivity in the conservation world. Through our programs, you're probably wondering, well, when is World Migratory Bird Day? And there are 2 official days associated with World Migratory Bird Day, and they recognize the flight patterns of migratory birds. So we have one peak event on the 2nd Saturday in May as birds make their northward journey, and we have another peak day in October as birds return to non-breeding grounds in the south, and that's the 2nd Saturday in October. However, we know from working with groups across the Americas and around the world that those days don't always work. So we encourage people to use World Migratory Bird Day when it works for them and when it works for the birds. So we have Migratory Bird Day events occurring every month of the year, and we encourage you to use it when it works best for you and your team. It is a global event, and I just want to share a little bit of the background. Migratory Bird Day started in the early 1990s, actually, so it's 30 years old this year. And then it grew in 2018 to become a global event, and we actually signed agreements across the flyways, the Americas Flyway, the African Eurasian Flyway, the East Asian Australasian flyway with our partners at the Convention of Migratory Species, the African Eurasian Water Bird Agreement, and the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. So the program, just like the Bird City Network, is growing. And as Bird City Network and World Migratory Bird Day and Environment for the Americas work together, you know, we see great potential for the future for the programs. Joanna already mentioned that we have a conservation theme that we facilitate every year, and this becomes the basis for our conservation messaging and also for the actions that we recommend people take in their communities. It's also noted that sometimes these actions become part of Bird City requirements. And so as we learn more about the factors that threaten migratory birds, we also learn more about some of the things that you can do to help protect migratory birds. So just as an example, on the far left, you see the poster that's focusing on plastic pollution. And that poster reflects the theme of pollution and plastics and what they're doing to our environment and to migratory birds and other birds as well. This was one of the first years that people started to think about plastic pollution as an issue that threatens not only marine animals, but also birds, and not just marine birds, but also birds in other locations. So it has become part of the actions of some Bird City programs, and we're pleased to see it as well as actions for other conservation programs as around the world as well. This year, as Joanna mentioned, our theme is focusing on water. Of course, that doesn't mean that you have to use a current theme. We want you to use World Migratory Bird Day with your community as a way to inform them about migratory bird and other bird conservation efforts that you're doing. And this, you know, what we know from World Migratory Bird Day events is that they're very attractive, especially to people who are new to the bird world. These friendly types of events are ways that you can reach new audiences, people who are interested in learning but may not have heard about migratory birds or birds and bird conservation before. And so what makes a World Migratory Bird Day program? It doesn't have to be a full-blown event or a 3-day festival, although it can be if you want it to be. It can be a daytime program. It can be a morning bird walk with integrated conservation messages, school-based programming. We have schools that participate with activities throughout the week. We have zoos that participate, museums and libraries, wildlife refuges, national forests, you name it. Public lands and state parks, as well as other private lands as well. So you can really be creative with your Migratory Bird Day program. And again, we do also provide materials, both downloadable and in print, as well as messaging and social media tools that you can use to help engage the community and learning more about your Bird City program. How did this get started and this connection to the Bird City program? Well, I have to go back to the early days of Bird City, which is when Wisconsin started launching Bird City. And what we noticed as we were tracking the World Migratory Bird Day events was that Wisconsin had this phenomenal number of events on the map. And it started one year, I noticed, oh, Wisconsin, you know, it's got 10 events. And then the next year, 20, and then the next year, 50. Finally, I called and said, hey, what's going on in Wisconsin? And they said, oh, we've got the Bird City program. So I was like, wow, that's so fantastic. So we learned more about Bird City through the Wisconsin program and started attending their meetings and engaging with them to promote the conservation materials, as well as how to host an activity or a public event. And so we're so pleased, again, to be partnering with American Bird Conservancy and to be part of the growth of the Bird City Network. What do these two programs have in common? Well, really, it's just everything. Our focuses are the same. We're looking at improving habitat for migratory birds. We're looking at ways that people can live more sustainable lifestyles, ways that your communities can help address threats to birds, and providing education to the public, any communities within your locations where you can reach out and share information. This is building communities for conservation, and that's one of the things that we love at Environment for the Americas, and that it's the tool that World Migratory Bird Day was designed to be, was to help to improve this community-based conservation effort. Through our partnership with American Bird Conservancy and through the Bird City Network program, what we're looking forward to doing is taking on the launch of the Latin American Caribbean program. And so just to give you a little more information about that, we're starting with a soft launch. We've been working closely with partners in Colombia and Mexico first, to make sure that the criteria for Bird City programs works in those countries, to make sure that we have the materials in Spanish that our partners need, and to make sure that everything is relevant, both culturally and linguistically. We are so pleased that those two locations, those two countries, Mexico and Colombia, have launched their first Bird City programs. And we'll be working with new cities in Central America and the Caribbean to do the same. That is to make sure that Bird City translates well in those locations and to get those first communities launched. So we're looking forward to doing that. Once that's available, we'll be growing the program more. And so what you can do is, if you're interested, and we've already had a lot of people express interest, and I saw there was a question in the chat box about Costa Rica. There isn't a community in Costa Rica yet, but when we open up the opportunity in Central America, I know that's going to be fast and coming. So if you're interested, we invite you to go to the webpage and go to the interested tab and send a message in. We're keeping a record of all that information so that we can reach out to you and help get that information so that we can start launching new programs. But what I want to do now is I want to turn this over to Miguel Matta. Miguel is our Latin American coordinator for World Migratory Bird Day, but I got to say he does a lot more even than World Migratory Bird Day, which is a huge job in itself. Miguel is going to share information with you about our two first programs in Colombia and Mexico. And just want to say how much I appreciate Miguel, Daniela, Leticia, and Laura for all of their work in Latin America. And did I say Daniela? In Latin America and the Caribbean, for all their work on World Migratory Bird Day and on Bird Cities. So thank you, Miguel, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sue. For our audience, Miguel will be speaking in Spanish. If you are okay for just listening to him for a few minutes, we'll be back to speaking in English after his presentation. If you're okay with that, don't worry about hitting any buttons. If you would like to have the translation services, make sure to click that globe icon on the bottom and select English. You will need to turn it back. So when I get back on camera, make sure to go back to the original audio. But for now, Miguel, if you want to set up your presentation.
Thank you very much, Jordan and Susan. Muchas gracias a todos por escuchar esta parte de cómo Ciudad de las Aves se vuelve una realidad en Latinoamérica y el Caribe, y cómo estamos conectados a través del Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias con este programa. Mi nombre es Miguel Matta, estoy coordinando el Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias en América Latina desde el 2018, y es por ello que a través de la conexión que este programa ha establecido con diferentes educadores, grupos organizados, universidades, en diferentes países de todas estas regiones y a través de todos los programas, nos sentimos muy contentos y a la vez muy agradecidos con toda la red de educadores que hemos podido integrar a lo largo de los años. Y es que hemos establecido programas del Día Mundial de las Aves en todos los países de América Latina y el Caribe. Hemos traducido nuestros materiales educativos al inglés, al español, al portugués, al francés. Y trabajamos con un equipo que está presente en la región, viviendo y entendiendo sus comunidades día a día. Y es esa relación que existe entre el Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias, que es celebrada en cada ciudad de las aves, inicialmente en Estados Unidos y Canadá, que hace la relación para poder multiplicar o pensar en multiplicar este programa en América Latina. Cuando se nos dio la oportunidad de empezar a discutir cómo el programa podía ser adaptado a nuestra región, fue muy emocionante todo el proceso, porque trabajamos directamente con comunidades para hacer posible un reconocimiento de su esfuerzo local y que ya lleva varios años gestándose en sus comunidades, pero a este nivel iba a llevar a un reconocimiento internacional de todo el esfuerzo que ya habían completado. Y es por eso que nuestro equipo del Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias ahora toma el liderazgo de ciudades de en América Latina y el Caribe. Y para ello quiero presentarles a nuestro equipo, que está conformado por Daniela Souza, que está en México, fue la principal líder encargada de la ciudad de las aves en Cozumel. Luego tenemos a Leticia Andina en El Salvador, que está encargada del piloto de Ciudad de las Aves en América Central. Laura Babular se encuentra en Trinidad y estará trabajando para la Ciudad de las Aves en América, en el Caribe, perdón. Y mi nombre es Miguel Matta. Bueno, estuvimos trabajando para la creación de la primera Ciudad de las Aves en Colombia. ¿Por qué Ciudad de las Aves puede ser un programa exitoso y viable en nuestra región? Y es que Ciudad de las Aves, quiero empezar aclarando, el término de ciudad es bastante amplio. Una ciudad, una comunidad, un grupo organizado de personas, una comunidad indígena, rural o una gran ciudad pueden aplicar a Ciudad de las Aves. La Ciudad de las Aves es un término abierto que abraza a todas aquellas comunidades que hacen esfuerzos locales, acciones diarias por proteger su hábitat y por proteger las aves, y encontrar en esa comunidad un impulso que viene desde los educadores, el gobierno, los grupos organizados para proteger y hacer de esa comunidad un orgullo local. Estas comunidades en nuestra región, América Latina, el Caribe, han realizado acciones de conservación por muchos años y sabemos que hay muchos grupos con mucha experiencia protegiendo las aves en estas regiones. Y no solamente por los beneficios económicos, sino por los beneficios ecológicos que traen las aves como polinizadores, como dispersores de semilla y su importancia principalmente en la agricultura, etcétera. Estas ciudades de las aves establecer una red de intercambio entre comunidades, ya sea dentro de los mismos países, dentro de las mismas comunidades, entre diferentes países del mismo lenguaje o de diferente idioma. Y finalmente, esta ciudad de las aves ofrece lugares saludables que generan bienestar y esperanza para las comunidades, lo cual es muy importante para nuestra región porque sabemos la gran relevancia que se le da a componentes culturales, religiosos o de comunidad en estas regiones. Entonces quiero compartir algunas de las experiencias que fueron vividas en la primera ciudad de las aves en América Latina. Fue la isla Cozumel, ubicada en México. En este lugar, un conjunto de organizaciones juntaron sus esfuerzos desde los grupos de observaciones de aves, educadores en las escuelas, la municipalidad, fundaciones locales para trabajar en cumplir una serie de requisitos que son obligatorios y que se pueden ir adaptando a cada comunidad para dar ese reconocimiento de sus esfuerzos en el largo tiempo. Esta ciudad fue nombrada en octubre del 2022, en donde el equipo de Environment for the Americas y el equipo local realizó una gran celebración para toda la comunidad y hacer este reconocimiento público en televisión, en periódicos, en radios y ofreciendo a las personas información sobre cuáles eran las actividades que cumplieron para certificarse como Ciudad de las Aves. Entre ellas estaba la restauración del hábitat, que está muy relacionado con el año de la contaminación por plásticos en el Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias. La restauración de manglares, la creación de sitios de rutas de observación de aves, paradores como torres de observación de aves dentro de los humedales y, por supuesto, actividades educativas para todas las edades. La ciudad de las aves en Cozumel ha tenido un gran impulso de diferentes programas después de su nombramiento, entre los que se han reforzado. Algunos son como los planes de manejo y conservación de esta área, visibilizando esta isla por su compromiso a restaurar la contaminación por plástico, restaurar sus hábitats, crear conciencia en sus comunidades a través de programas como Sala Pajarial, por ejemplo, o las celebraciones del programa de aves urbanas. Felicitamos a todos aquellos en México y sabemos que esa ciudad de las aves en Cozumel está avanzando muy bien. Y el más reciente programa que estamos muy contentos de compartir es la primera ciudad de las aves en el país con más aves del mundo. Ese país es Colombia. Y en este país existe este pueblo que se llama Santander de Quilichao, que no precisamente era bien conocido por ir a observar aves, pero que logró juntar voluntades de diferentes sectores para hacer que Ciudad de las Aves, Colombia, fuera Santander de Quilichao. Y esto fue un esfuerzo realmente comunitario. En este trabajo se entregó la certificación en marzo de 2023, un conjunto de organizaciones que incluyen a las profesoras en las escuelas, las alcaldías local, los grupos organizados de observadores de aves, los campesinos realizaron acciones para proteger el hábitat, para ofrecer un conjunto de banderas que les decían a todo el mundo, somos la primera ciudad de las aves en Colombia, y lo hicimos juntando diferentes organizaciones, cumpliendo diferentes actividades. Quiero compartir solo algunas de las que más me gustaron. Ellos eligieron, por ejemplo, al chicao, que es el Icterus nigrobularis o Yellow Oriole. Este ave amarilla fue elegida como el ave emblema de la ciudad de las aves de Santander de Quilichao. Se trabajó con las comunidades en un área natural protegida para comprar más terreno, para crear senderos de observación de aves, y son los mismos campesinos los que crearon estos espacios, los que también ofrecen desayunos para los turistas, tanto internacionales como locales. Y en este programa, en esta ciudad, existe una escuela que se llama el Fernández Guerra, que es un tutor técnico para jóvenes con interés en la educación ambiental y en la formación ambiental, en donde se hizo por muchos años la celebración del Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias, y cuyas profesoras fueron también fundamentales para el desarrollo de este programa. Ellos combinaron artistas que generaron murales en todo el pueblo, y también algunas acciones de reciclaje con el cual construyeron esculturas de plástico que están exhibidas en las plazas principales de la ciudad. Certificaron y empezaron programas de control de mascotas para controlar las poblaciones de gatos y perros, y así facilitar acciones simples que podamos hacer en conjunto para ayudar a las aves en nuestra comunidad. Por supuesto que nuestro equipo tiene nuevas metas, y estamos muy contentos de las dos primeras ciudades de las aves en México y en Sudamérica, pero también queremos compartir que estamos trabajando en futuros pilotos en el Caribe, porque sabemos que las ciudades en el Caribe tienen otra dinámica, unas condiciones particulares de amenazas a las aves, particularmente con el desarrollo del turismo, y sabemos también que hay muchos grupos organizados trabajando para la conservación de estos espacios. Por supuesto, también así en Centroamérica estamos trabajando en estos pilotos para certificar las primeras ciudades en esa región. Sabemos, por ejemplo, algunas de los intereses principales en Panamá, Costa Rica, Honduras, pero esta es una región con tanta cultura. Estamos muy emocionados de cuáles van a ser las próximas ciudades de las aves en estas regiones. Por favor, pueden contactarme a mi email en Environment for the Americas, en la página de web, o directamente a mi email personal acá. Muchas gracias por su atención. Estamos acá para responder todas las preguntas, siempre dispuestos a ayudarlos a concretar esta ciudad de las aves en sus regiones. Y por favor, lo que queremos compartir con todos es que Ciudad de las Aves en América Latina y el Caribe es un programa que está en sus pilotos para entender cómo ir adaptando este programa a cada una de las comunidades, y sabemos que ya hay muchos grupos interesados en ser Ciudad de las Aves, después de Mel y después Santander de Quilichao. Entonces, por favor, no se mantengan alejados. Queremos trabajar con todos ustedes para hacer eso posible. Nuestro sueño es tener muchas ciudades en nuestra región que trabajen conjuntamente con el Día Mundial de las Aves Migratorias para crear comunidades más amigables y saludables para todos. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Miguel. We're now going to be speaking in English again. So if you need the translation for Spanish, make sure you click on the globe and click on Spanish for the translation. And if you were listening to the translation from Spanish to English, you need to click back to the original audio so that you can understand what I'm saying. But Bryan, I know you have a few more thoughts, so do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you, Joanna, Sue, and Miguel. That was all great. I never get tired of listening to you guys talk. We wanted to close with one slide, and I've just quick scanned the chat that would answer a couple questions about what can you do. We hope you find this to be an exciting program and something you want to see where you live and something you'd like to be a part of. So we've got 4 things here. The first is to start a program. The way this works is if you want your community to be recognized, you need a program where you are first. There's a couple reasons for that. One of them is that you're more likely to do something with and for your neighbors than you are with someone who's 2,000 miles away from you. That's just how things work. So really the local nature of this is really critical to seeing the right kinds of actions and programs get built. Those local programs can also provide better guidance, advice, connections to people who can help communities in their areas than you can if you, again, have to ask that person that is on the other side of the country or the other side of the hemisphere. There's another reason, which is simply capacity. So the Bird City applications, they take a lot of work from the communities. You have to put everything you did in, and someone has to review all of those. And as we're getting going, I think we have about 220, 230 Bird City communities already. And it's a lot of work to manage just that. And if we're successful and kind of turn this, the white portions of this map into the Bird City colors, we're potentially going to have thousands of communities. And simply the work of reviewing those would be something that would be extremely difficult for a single organization to do. So if you live in one of the areas that doesn't have a program, we would like to hear from you if you want to start one. Generally, to start one, we're looking for an organization, ideally 2 or 3 that would partner to do this as a group, because you've got more sustainability, more resources, and more help if you are not by yourself, but being a single organization certainly does not rule you out. And you can contact us. That gold arrow there is pointing at the Interested in Bird City part of the website. And you can reach out and say, I'd like to start a program, and tell us where you are and where you'd like to start it. And we'll get back to you. If you do live where there is a program, you can apply for your community right now. You can go to their website on the Bird City site, tell them you're interested, and they'll get you started. You can do that using that same blue button. You have to switch and pick the program, but you can answer or ask that question through that same spot. If you're not interested in starting a program or applying for your community, you can take any of these actions where you live today. So I would invite you to look at the program pages and their resources and what they're asking in their applications and get started. You can make your community better without this recognition, and maybe someday Bird City shows up where you are and you've already done everything you need to apply. And then the last thing is, if you're interested in supporting the Bird City network, really in any way, we'd also love to hear from you and get your thoughts on what that might look like. So again, I'd like to just say thank you to everybody for presenting today, for all of the hard work that's gone into the network and getting us here, and for all of the programs who have been doing the hard on the groundwork and have joined with us. We're looking forward to hopefully a big and busy future.
Thanks, Bryan. If I can have all the panelists come back on camera, please. Time has flown by, and there's so much great information that all of our panelists shared, so thank you. We are going to make sure that our entire audience gets all of the information that we presented and have more information to answer their questions and such, but we do have time for just one last thing that I want to make sure our panelists answer, and that is, what is the one thing that you hope everyone takes away from this webinar and goes and tells a friend? And we'll go in order of the panelists. So Bryan, what is one thing that you want folks to take away from this webinar?
I'm glad I get to answer first instead of last. I guess my message that I hope everybody gets is you can do this. If you want to see change where you are, you can do it, and we're here to help you do it. So I hope you walk away from this excited about the things that you think you can go and tackle and the help we can provide you in tackling them.
Awesome. And Joanna?
Yeah, thanks. And I guess for me, it's two things. It's birds first. When birds do well, so do we really. And by considering birds and wildlife in the planning of our communities, we can make such a difference for them, but also for people too. And then the second thing is kind of the hope and power of having tools like Bird City to help guide those actions and bring people together and really make things happen on the ground locally.
Thanks. And Sue?
Thank you, Jordan, and everyone else. For us, I guess that connection to your community and to your people and engaging them in bird conservation. So we feel like the power of conservation comes from your community, and we hope that you can take the Bird City Network and make that a possibility for you and all of the people who live where you do. Thank you.
And Miguel?
Sí, voy en español. Pienso que Virsite es un programa excelente para todos. Cuando puedes juntar amigos, familiares, educadores, y no necesitas ser la ciudad con más aves del mundo. Puede ser una pequeña ciudad, una pequeña comunidad. Virsity será la bandera con la cual las comunidades le dicen a todos, aquí estamos, somos una ciudad de las aves que forma parte de la red.
Gracias. And gracias to our audience. Thank you so much for participating today. We hope that you know how empowered you are to help birds, both individually and especially when you come together with others. We hope that the Bird City Network can provide a really great opportunity for you to take even more action for the birds that we all love and appreciate. Again, we'll make sure that you have all the information you need to get started if you haven't already. And thank you so much again to our panelists for all of the information presented today. So with that, I hope you go out in your community and share the birds. Thank you.